You follow what I'm trying to say?
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, I wanted to actually put this question across to Professor Narayanan, because Professor Narayanan brings with him a global experience of being a teacher. And Professor Narayanan, what has been your experience teaching some of the brightest, I mean, in
And
India,
solutions and possible solutions.
possible
That is
solutions?
very important for us today.
Yes, because you have taught here, you've studied in India, taught in India. So, what has been your experience teaching the brightest, and where do
So,
you, how would you like to know your thoughts on this?
Yes.
so namaste again. And Professor Ghatak, yours is the first class from a physics teacher in which I did not fall asleep. Hmm. So I like physics. I wanted to go into physics, but somebody said you won't get any job.
Uh,
I want to bring in a different perspective. Again, late 60s or whatever. Actually, I started my educational career in the lower kindergarten in Sri Lanka, where all my classmates were Muslim students, except for one Chinese girl. Everybody else was Muslim. It was quite and I think the next 6 years. So the first 1 year was in a convent. The next 5 years were in an Islamic school, actually, before moving to India. So, and the rest, I did all of it, including the Sri Lanka part, because they had nationalized all the schools. So everything was a government school. And through the SSLC, I was in a government school. I
that's a
did
good
go
model.
to 2 years in a St. Thomas College in Thrissur, a pre-degree, and then again in a government school, IIT Madras. So, and then I spent my next 40 something years in Georgia Institute of Technology, not Georgia Tech University. Anyway, but there's a long story. But Georgia Institute of Technology is sort of on the IIT model, but it's not entrance is national everywhere. But it's a state institution. So again, state government. So my perspective, in other words, does not come from the elite. Anything. I've always been an outsider. Okay, both literally a foreigner most of my life, and in the institutions where I worked, we were always outsiders. Thrissur, of course, is the center of the universe, but it's South India. We are far away from Delhi. When I talk to some people in Delhi in a forum, and I said, "Why don't you call the Prime Minister's office?" And I said, "Easy for you to say. They're all your students, okay? But why would they Prime Minister's office talk to me?" So my perspective is completely from this faraway place, and I must say that we did not have many options. There were no jobs in Kerala in the 1960s. There are a few more today, but not in industry and all this. It's very, very backward in that respect. In other respects, of course, it's the most advanced state in the world. So perspectives are a bit different. And for me, getting into that IIT was plain luck, whatever, I don't know. I did have a reasonable rank, I think. It astonished me. But it was a completely different experience. People like me were like fish out of water. For the first time, we were seeing what really good students are. Okay, and all I told you, I never had to stay awake in classes because it wasn't necessary. I could pass an exam, get 80% without any effort. Suddenly, I was among people who were far better than me. And the question was, should I kill myself or drop out? I don't think dropout was a real option because there weren't any other options. And or learn to fight and win. And that was a very, very tough decision. I don't think I took the decision until the end of semester 6 out of 10. In those days, it was 10 semesters, not 8. And literally at the end of sixth semester, I decided I better wake up and learn to sit in the front row where the teacher will catch me if I fall asleep. Okay. Basics like that. So I do come from that experience. The people of my generation in Kerala, they did not have much opportunity. And in fact, these days, when my wife goes, she went to an engineering college in our hometown, government engineering college. And when we go to their reunions, we see what people have done from that generation. They have done very well. They had a very good education, actually. They did learn. But much of it they learned to learn by themselves because the teachers were not even around. Okay, so they became very independent. They did not have teachers like Professor Ghatak. They had people who were building houses while they should have been teaching. So they learned and they became independent. It was a very hard life. And IIT was extremely stressful, no doubt about it. But I want to correct Professor Ghatak on one point, flexibility. When I joined aerospace engineering, that is because that's the only thing I would do since they did not let me go into physics. They were apparently my father was sent instead of me to the interview after the JEE result had come out because I had to take the pre-degree exam. And I gave him strict instructions, aerospace engineering or nothing else. I had a sufficiently high rank and apparently they put a lot of pressure on him. Then why does your son want to go into aeronautics? No, aerospace. He can get into electronics. That is the top, everybody wants to go into electronics or electrical engineering. Why does he want to go into aeronautics or naval architecture? And my father said, sorry, you don't know my son. He won't do anything that he doesn't want to do. But in aerospace engineering, when we started, there were 16 students. At the end of year 2, they did have the option. Several people changed out of aerospace engineering. And it was a good decision for them. One of them went to mechanical engineering. He graduated in mechanical engineering. He went to Iowa State University, did a PhD with NASA. So he came back into aerospace. He lived all his life. He passed away a few years back. At NASA Ames Research Center, he was the world's best in turbo machine computational fluid dynamics. Another, I won't say her name, but at that point there were only 2 women in that whole class. She really didn't want to be in aerospace engineering. She switched to electronics, I believe, graduated, went and got an advanced degree in the United States, became the senior vice president of one of the biggest IT companies in America. So she's probably a trillionaire or whatever it is. Very, very, very nice person. So they did have other options and they went into that. Anyway, I want to sort of stop here because the rest of what I want to say is not nice. And I would rather hear from other people. I usually want to end on an optimistic note. But unfortunately, this is one problem where, or I don't even want to call it a problem, as I'll mention later. The situation is way beyond easy solutions. So I want to stop there and let Anjali, let everybody else talk. And I want some time at the end before her closing statement.
So I was debating whether I should ask this question to Professor Ghatak or should I ask this question to Nivedita, but I do want to start with asking this question to Nivedita, and then I would like to know what is Professor Ghatak's perspective on centers of higher learning. So how do you think, Nivedita, if you could throw some light on this, how can our centers of higher learning excel? I mean, it's very clear from all this discussion that we've had so far that there are major concerns about the centers of higher learning because students, they want to go out of India for higher education. So, what are your thoughts on and these centers? Do you think they need support from the government, or do you think does the government needs to just leave them on their own?
Yeah, thanks, Anjali. But let me say that I'm really worried. What Professor Narayanan's last sentence sounded ominous. What shocking revelation is he going to make? But on a serious note, um, I'll first say, as having been part at the receiving end, I have to say that Indian centers of higher learning are are comparable to anywhere, globally comparable to any in the world. And let me go even below that. I was in the UN for 5 years, and you know what I found? I found that, and I felt proud about it. The Indian bureaucrats and civil servants and police officers who were there were probably running the whole show. We are so good. We can be so good, but we often are not. Why not? That is the question. So our children are very, I don't want to sound racist or biased, but our children are intelligent. They have a higher IQ. They are good. But it's something in our DNA. It's God given, but we don't make good use of it very often. I have my views on that. Now, in the centers of higher learning, I found that we are very good. But again, as Professor Ghatak and Professor Narayanan both mentioned, um the teachers, they lose interest because the students are not interested enough. It was probably much better 30, 40 years back when I was a student. But now it's even worse because now they have the mobile, they have the internet, they don't need teachers, some of them feel. And that is not a good thing because we need teachers. We need teachers who are going to teach the students not just intellectually and academically, but also how to live life. I remember I was in a meeting. I was a joint secretary in Government of India, and our ex-prime minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, was chairing that meeting. And he started by saying that teachers are the bedrocks of our society. I at that point thought, and school teachers. It was a meeting about the salary of school teachers, and it was a cabinet note being prospective cabinet note being discussed. And I was a bit taken aback. I never looked at school teachers in that manner. I thought school teachers were some people you had to just get through school with their help and then go into college and have your own life. But school teachers are the bedrocks of our society. And we forget that. We have not understood that. We have not given enough importance to that. Secondly, in our colleges, and I will have to go back to the point I mentioned, a lot depends on what the parents, how the parents bring up their children. If the parents don't teach their children that you need to learn from your teachers, you need to have them as your role models, I think that the children would be quite happy doing what they please on their learning from their peers, learning from notes. That's how they would be brought up. But that's not how we bring up our children. That's not how we should bring up our children. I think, Professor Narayanan, everything is not lost. And I like to believe that every society goes through these cycles. And probably we have gone through this cycle of forcing things on our children, making our children do things that they are not good at. I think a time has come where students and young youth are learning that there is a lot to learn from our teachers. There is a lot to the fact that you do what you are good at and not what you are forced to do. And I say this because I deal with a lot of youth these days in my school, in running my NGO, etc. And I find that many of them have come from poor families, from tier two towns, but they have come because they really wanted to do what they are doing now. And that makes me happy. And I therefore feel that our educational institutions are as good as any in the world. But we are probably not taking care of them the way we should have. And I think that the solutions and the problems were enumerated by Professor Ghatak when he said absence of good leadership, absence of teachers holding interest, etc., etc. I'll stop here.
So, yes, I have heard this now. In quite a few sentences, there's been a reference to the deterioration in the quality and the standard of teaching and that of teachers. Professor Ghatak, how do you think we can improve the situation? How it can be redeemed? Has teaching really deteriorated? And again, I do want to hear this from you, but at the same time, after you're done, I want to hear Professor Narayanan's perspective on this deterioration of our teaching standards in India. And since he has taught in outside India, in America as well, so maybe that would give us another newer perspective on teaching and what we can do to improve. Professor Ghatak, please, you go ahead first.
Thank you again. Nivedita has brought in several very important points, and I will respond in the following manner. Some of the problems are solvable, some of the problems are very difficult to solve. And the number one problem is the solution is how do we get the very good teachers in our education system, whether it is a private university, whether it is a government university, whether it is a college, or whether it is a school. How do we get out dedicated persons to lead and guide the younger generation, who have compassion, who have love, who have feeling for others? And that will get transmitted, in my opinion, to the parents, because parents are all the time wanting their students to come first in the class. They don't teach compassion, they don't teach, we are not teaching in our schools the compassion, human values, and things like that. We are teaching how do we get ahead of the system. And this we see in all walks of our life, whether he's a professor, whether he's a politician, whether he's a bureaucrat, whether he's a police officer. Unfortunately, India has become, I very sad to say, a fairly arrogant country. And that politeness, that humility. And I heard recently a talk by a person by the name of Professor Krishna, who was a very brilliant physicist, and then he became a disciple of J. Krishnamurti. And he gave a talk, beautiful talk. I will forward this to all of you. Education, Science, and Spirituality. And he says, science tells us that we know so little. We know only 0.1% or even less than that. Even today, we know very little. So science teaches us humility. So scientists and teachers have to be humble. And if teachers are humble, automatically the students will become humble. Students will become polite. If teachers and our seniors are rude and arrogant, it will filter down to the bottom. So the rot always starts from the top. I am 100% sure of that. And so therefore, once again, the solution is the appointment of the people at the top. And therefore, as I mentioned in my very introductory remarks, we need 100 people like Professor Hardy, who may not have got the Nobel Prize or the Fields Medal or something like that, but he nurtured a person, a young man from India, 30-year-old or something like that, Ramanujan, and made him world famous. We require people like him. Do we have? Of course we have. But that mindset is not there. So it is all, as Nivedita ji said, that there is too much of pressure from the parent side. But also we have to be very careful about the teachers. It is not the appointment, it is the atmosphere that you have in the system. If your director of an IIT is an arrogant person, it is bound to happen that most of the professors will become arrogant and rude. If it is the top of the institution, it is the top of the political system, it is the top of the bureaucracy. If our IAS officers are as polite as Nivedita Haran and then as down to earth, then things will change. Bound to change. If I am rude, my son will definitely be rude, will be arrogant. And so, therefore, teachers are the most important community of our system. We cannot use them to do election duty. They are not treated with respect. If you do not treat if you do not treat the teachers with respect, how will the students come up? So it's a very vicious cycle. So the first thing, as very rightly pointed out by some of the panelists, that we have to, you see, we cannot select teachers. They are in such large number. We have to select only motivated teachers. No, you select anyone, put them in an environment that you make a system that in which you have to be polite, you have to be compassionate, you have to care for others. I always give the example. I had the privilege of spending 2 years at Singapore, and most of the work is done by Indians there. Most of the middle level work is done by the Indians there, and they are scrupulously honest. They are all scrupulously honest because the environment is scrupulously honest. So we have to provide that environment. Leadership, that is the most important thing of the time. Put top people who are who can guide the younger generation. And I have seen in my little innings at IIT Delhi, if I have compassion, if I am honest in my financial dealings, my juniors will definitely follow me. And this I have seen myself. This I have seen myself. And I have, in my own small way, I have said that if a class starts at 8 o'clock, you have to be there at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And you have to take the class. And this is the system that we had in IIT, that let us suppose in a class of 50, only 20 students come up. Then you have to take that class fully, as if the entire class is there. And therefore, this discipline, this compassion, this care, producing people like Hardy, I repeat that, and having less of arrogance among the top people. You see, in a family also, if the top person is corrupt, if the top person is this thing, then the family will be like that. So the solutions are there. So what is my final solution? Final solution is have a large number of educational research institutions, large number. Appoint people with extreme care, and a vice chancellor's post or a director's post must never remain vacant. I have seen CSIR laboratories, the directorship is vacant for 2 years. It is held by an official. That will spoil everything. So people with vision, people with leadership qualities, are there enough people in India? Of course there are many people in India. Both, as was mentioned by other panelists, that we have an outstanding group of young men and women who are really very bright, who require direction, who require compassion, who require love and care. I'm very excited about it, and I'm really grateful to Bharat TV to have given me this opportunity to speak out my mind. Because at the fag end of my life, I feel very frustrated. I feel very frustrated because I have seen very, very good students, but things are right now. The most unfortunate part is not going in the right direction. Not going in the right direction. And
So,
lots of important steps have to be taken very urgently, but it is possible. It is possible.
Professor Khattak, I have no words,
No,
uh, to after hearing what you have just said about the basic human values, the basic dharmic values, if I can put it that way, of compassion, caring for others, which we don't see it these days. It's not
yes,
just in
yes.
Bharat, but in other places also. It is all about earning money, and brings me
Yeah,
back to my childhood when I was told that, oh, if you just care about respect and love, that's not going to, you won't be able to feed
yes.
your family. And I always used to think, no, it just cannot be that way, because we need to be happy also, and we can only be happy when we care for others. But I
Yes.
just cannot explain, and I don't have the right words to express my feelings after hearing such words of wisdom from a great teacher like you, great professor like you, which is very, very rare. People do have academic knowledge, they have academic qualifications, but I have not heard people talk about these values. I usually hear them from monks or from sadhus, but not from people who are actually living in this world and practicing those values.
Thank you.
I
Any
think
comments
Anjali.
from Nivedita, from Professor
No,
Narayan?
Anjali, I would like to. I think Professor Narayanan should get the final word. I'm waiting to
Yes,
hear.
Oh my God. Okay.
yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I well, it will take too long to discuss all the problems and solutions. And it is an higher education is something that everybody knows about, because most people who talk about anything have had some level of higher education. So everybody has their opinions on it. Uh, it's not easy. I mean, the situation is whatever you see today is there for some strong reasons. Okay, the reasons may not be reasonable, but trying to change it, you can often do much worse harm than good. So it's not an easy thing to come in with a solution. Professor Gatak has said all the right things. Uh, Wonderful, and I agree with all of that. There are some minor issues. Okay, how do you make sure that you get good people at the top? So here's my question on that, and that might be my closing comment. If you see that a university, however large, whatever, is rotten at the top, and I mean rotten, rotten, at the top, what do you do about it? In
Very
India, I
easy.
don't see anything happening. But my question is this: why does that university continue to get accreditation to teach students, to hire people, when you know that the top is rotten? And I don't want to
That
go
is the
into. I mean,
problem. That
yes, I
is the
mean, I don't want
problem.
anyone,
That is the
any
problem.
top people out there to feel personally attacked. It applies
No.
to so many.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate part. That is
But
so. So
yeah,
that is the responsibility. It has. Oh, I have a solution. You have a think tank created by the government of outstanding people, and then
I,
there are good people who can take leadership. I can assure you that. I
but the
will.
action has to be there. See, these rotten people will not go away by themselves.
mm,
Oh,
Accreditation is the
they can be
only
removed.
stick,
They can be removed. They can be. They
only
can be put
stick that
aside.
India has is accreditation, and they have to make an example of one, maybe 10 places. Accreditation loss will bring huge dislocation and suffering to people, but it need not really happen. You give them 1 month, 30 days, clean out your entire administration, bring in people who know that they're going to get the same treatment with no notice if they do go the same way. This has to happen. You cannot just keep postponing it, saying, "Oh, but this is the friend of that and that." Nothing. I also have one caveat to that. See, I thought about it. I mean, I thought about this question a lot. Why don't they do something? I mean, the Supreme Court says this person has to be fired. What more do you want? What are you waiting for? Then I said, it's not really that person's fault. They applied for a job. They were totally unqualified, but they were selected. Who selected them? It turns out that it's the university senate. Who is the university senate? It's the most distinguished professors in the university. If these are the role models, why should the younger faculty become any better? And how can you expect the students to get any better? And why should you be surprised if the students feel suicidal? I would too. So that has to happen. Exemplary action to you said show cause notice. I think that's how things are in India. 30 days, why should accreditation not be removed from this institution? Second part is, if accreditation does get removed, the students should have the right to sue these people for personal damages. They must be personally liable because they knowingly committed crimes. They went against the promises that they had made. They should be held personally liable for all their ill-gotten wealth to compensate the students who paid the fees and the parents who put in the money. Those threats have to be there, and the threat has to be real. Has to happen to one or two people, unfortunately. And the Senate, University Senate, has to realize that they cannot be just sycophants or whatever it is, always worried about, I want to be put on this committee, I want that, I won't say anything. They should be fired. The Senate has failed. Okay, bring younger people in and say, okay, you take this job, but you will get kicked out even worse if you don't do your job. They have to do their job, their dharma. So I will stop there, and that's why I said my solutions are not pleasant.
Yeah, I can understand. Anjali, sorry to intervene here. I can understand Professor Narayanan's anguish because something of like that has been happening in Kerala. Universities,
among other places, it's not just Kerala. Some places are worse.
No, we are familiar with Kerala, Professor Narayanan, and therefore we are saying it. Other places we are not that much aware. I am also half Kerala, so half Keralite. So in Kerala, it did happen that people who were totally unqualified, who were posted only because they were so and so CMs, PSs, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, daughter, son, etc. Now that is unforgivable. And I think, Professor Ghatak, that is something where these are cases where UGC should sit up. It didn't sit up. It didn't do anything. Why?
That is the problem.
That's the question that remains.
Thank you. Thank you.
In my own institute, I have seen outstanding people as directors, outstanding people of vision, and then equally wrong people also coming into the directorship. That is also I have seen. So it is the appointment, and it is possible. 1 in 10 can prove to be wrong. You cannot be perfect all the time, but by and large, I have very little experience at the top, but I can name 10 people who would be ideal for directorship, and who I know that but so it is not difficult. It is not difficult. So the main problem is appointment at the top in all institutions, in all people of integrity, people of vision, people of compassion, who care for others, people who can impregnate values in our younger generation that are there. We just have to look for them.
Integrity, vision. Yeah. So these are the words that have been echoing in our today's program: integrity, compassion, and
leadership,
and leadership and caring for others.
Yes.
So these are the only words that I have been hearing, which are the foundation for being leaders, foundation for becoming teachers. And I'm so grateful to this panel as always. And we are very, very fortunate that we have the opportunity to have people like Professor Ghatak, Professor Narayanan, Nivedita Haran, who bring a wealth of background and who are able to enlighten us and talk in length and breadth about these topics. Today, I'm going to not add any more concluding comments, and I would just take this moment to say thank you to all three of you, Dr. Nivedita Haran, Professor Narayan Komrat, and of course, Professor Khatak. We feel very, very blessed and honored that you uh, came to our virtual studios and uh,
Pleasure.
you shared your thoughts with us, very profound thoughts, which are so very much needed in this day and age. And viewers, thank you so much for
Thank you so
joining us
much.
in Bharat FM.
So great.